All right, so we are here this morning with Dr. Anthony Chaffee. Of course, I'm sure everybody here knows in this space who he is, and if you don't, you have definitely been living under a rock. So, welcome, Dr. Anthony. How are you doing this evening? We know that you are on evening time. We are on morning time. So, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you?
I'm rather well. I'm rather well. So I want
Good.
to get into some some off off topic questions, some off topic subjects, things that are not typically carnivore, but maybe still relate to carnivore, um, that are more like pertinent to real life experience going through how you have gotten to
Mhm,
this point in your life. So
mhm,
for you, what was the point in time when it really became a heavy focus that, okay, yes, now I know that carnivores for me. This is the best idea for humanity. Now having to stand on that platform publicly. When was that decision like a no holds bar, can't turn back now. This isn't
mhm.
is can't keep it quiet anymore.
Well, I was probably a couple of years after I got back into it, and I was really interested in it. I obviously remembered my experiences inadvertently doing carnivore, just avoiding all plants in my early 20s, and I'm never feeling better in my entire life, always trying to figure out how to get back to that, and then all of a sudden I figured it out, cut out the plants. And so that had a huge impact on my health, my athleticism, my parents' health, and family's health. And I just got back from doing humanitarian work, and so I had some free time, and so I was spending 10, 12 hours a day just reading studies, just asking questions. Okay, if this is true, then we should see some evidence. Or we have two competing avenues, which is meat's bad or meat's good, or we should be vegans, we should be omnivores, or we should be carnivores. You should be able to find evidence with which to test that against. So I just kept asking questions and doing that. So I spent months doing that and learned a lot, and then debated a lot of people, because there were a lot of people that you would just get in discussions with at work and at the hospital and online and all these other sorts of things. So I was just spending a lot of time with that, and I got to the point that I was sort of thinking about it like, well, I know a lot now, and I think that I have something to contribute. And the sort of carnivore world was small enough that I felt that there's some things that I could say that maybe other people weren't saying that were worth saying. But then, I'd never done a YouTube channel. I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to do a podcast. And it's just,
Right.
I was just being a bit sort of, gun shy about it, I guess. And then eventually, we were coming back like during COVID, and I was just in Sydney. I was stuck there for a couple weeks before they'd let me back into Western Australia, coming back from the US, and met a buddy of mine over there, um, Simon Lewis, and he just would say, "Hey, why don't we shoot some podcasts or whatever, or videos, and like I'll have them for my channel, and you can keep them and do them on your channel." Actually, to back up, I did a debate on ACTM, so the Australian College of Nutritional Environmental Medicine, and we did a debate on carnivore versus vegan diet. So we had people on the pro meat side, and and three on the vegan side, which we won. And so there was like some problems. I might have been flying or this and this, and I may not have been able to like make it live. So they're like, well, can you please like film something 7 minutes? So I was trying to like do that, and I was writing it out, and I was just like, well, if I film this, I might as well just like use this as like the first thing like on a channel. And I couldn't think of it like, well, what do I put on a channel? What do I talk about? Like, what do I even do? And I was like, okay, well, this can be the first one. And so I filmed that. But then I was able to actually do the debate. And they said, okay, well, why don't I just do it like longer and actually get into detail with a lot of these things? So I did a longer version of that. That was my first video on carnivore versus vegan diets. Still one of my favorite videos, because I think it just covers so much. And then so I met my buddy Simon, and he said, hey, well, why don't we, do do some videos and I'll ask you a bunch of questions and we'll just talk about it. And then we can just use that. So that became the basis of it. And so it was just like, okay, well now it sort of forced me to actually look into this and how do I start a channel? How do I upload? What do I do? And then I just started going into it and just learning on the fly. I didn't look up anything. I didn't have any team or anything like that. So you take my early thumbnails are just atrocious. And, just trying to do something.
I like your current thumbnails. I'm here for the current thumbnails.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that was it. And then it just sort of took off, and I sort of started writing down different things that I thought would be important to talk about. Simon had a bunch of ideas and we would just talk about them. And I would sort of had another debate on cholesterol and just sort of then did a video about, what I talked about in the debate. And still one of my favorite ones on cholesterol, the truth about cholesterol and heart disease. Mm-hmm. So, things like that. And then it just sort of started growing from there. And I got to the point that I had sort of said a lot of the things I wanted to say. And I thought it was a really tight, neat package of videos that people could use and then go and better their life. And, I was working anywhere from 120 hours to 135 hours a week at that point at the hospital in neurosurgery. And so it's just like, I sort of was thinking, well, maybe I just leave it at that and just let my channel just be. And because I didn't really want to like water it down with a bunch of, random ass videos that, just sort of diluted all these other ones that if you could just go to that channel, just watch every single video, great, you're done. And, but I started having more opportunities to interview different people that I was really interested in talking to, that I thought were really interesting. And as the channel grew, I got more opportunities to be introduced to other people that I really was interested in speaking to. And so I said, okay, well, as long as it's interesting, as long as there are, people that are worth sort of talking to, I'll just sort of keep doing it. And, there's a lot of people out there. So obviously there's a lot of interesting conversations to have. And so it just kept going from there.
Love that.
Isn't it funny how that kind of just happens when it comes to actually getting to a point where you're like, hey, I need to share this information. People need to hear this. And it kind of just ends up snowballing somehow. You just end up on this roller coaster. I have another question aside from that, especially being such a prominent masculine figure in everything across the board, whether it's for carnivore, whether it's for fitness, whether it's for sports. You've kind of dabbled in quite a few of those areas. And how would you express your opinion on what modern masculinity is today, and how have we declined in the male stature of existence now?
Coming in hot.
That's a very interesting question. Look, I mean, I think that a lot of what masculinity is just, being a good person, being a protector, being a provider. And that can mean a lot of different things, but you're there and you're helping people, you're protecting people. A strong person, a strong figure, a strong man is someone who's willing and able to protect other people. And if you don't have that ability, then, how can you really be a protector? And, it's like the old saying, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And so you want to be able to, Jordan Peterson sort of says, liberates us in sort of an interesting way, which is you want to, train yourself to be dangerous and then control it. Yeah. And I think that's sort of a good way of putting it. But basically, you need to be capable of protecting people, people that can't protect themselves. And, trying to say that that's toxic masculinity, of being a strong person and being a strong man who's willing and able to protect others. That's nonsense. Saying that, I mean, you can be the people that are toxic are the people that are attacking people, that are hurting people, that are abusing people.
Yeah.
But that's who a strong man is there to protect you from. And if you don't have strong men, then that's trouble. Then you're opening the door for a bunch of tyrants to come in.
I think
So mhm.
my personal opinion kind of leads very much into that. I don't believe or agree in the whole concept that masculinity as being a strong dominance, not the word, but a figure of stature, meaning you don't present danger in a situation unless you feel like you have the power to do it, right? So if you are in an environment where the male figures that are in your environment propose a question of whether or not somebody wants to push the button of, oh, I think I can do what I want or whatever, that to me is an important stance that we have lost over the course of the last 30 years. I don't particularly agree that masculinity is a toxic aspect, that it has been so washed into, our belief system as of recently. Um, Not to touch on the debate that, there's a place for women and there's a place for men. I think we both equally can house both of those energetic spaces if we have to be, but are we supposed to be? Is the whole concept. Because like you said, if the male aspect of our division of men and women, right? If the male aspect is not standing in the power aspects that they are, physically, mentally attributed for, well, then what do women have a choice to except for to stand up in that place? Because guess what? They're the ones usually having to handle the children and protect the children and do all of that. And not that women aren't capable, but are we supposed to do it 24/7 comparative to a partnership with masculine and feminine energies together? So curious stance on that. Thank you for being willing to step into that, because it is a cautious territory apparently, which I think is so crazy.
Yeah, but
It's nauseous
I mean,
because of men that are attackers rather than willing to have an open debate or an open conversation, right?
Well, and
well, look, I was just going to say, that raises an interesting point, which is, predators. I mean, who's getting hurt here? I mean, sure, men get hurt and things like that, but women are the ones that get physically victimized by when there's no defenses there, when there's no protection there, and so it could, you could argue that the people, the men saying, "Oh, this is horrible," blah 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 blah, they're just trying to, get the defenders off the gates, so that they have the ability to be the aggressors, be the tyrants, be the victimizers, because now it's toxic if you protect people from people like them, right?
exactly.
And there's all sorts of things, and people can normalize whatever the hell they want. There's all sorts of things going on like that. But not to sort of go too far into this, but there's a strange thing right now where they're trying to normalize pedophilia. And they're trying to say that this should be part of the LGBTQ spectrum, and that you should put the letter M for was it minor attracted persons?
Yeah.
Maps.
Really,
Yeah.
M stands for monster, right?
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
you're trying to normalize that and say, well, this is just a sexual predilection. It's just my preference. Well, my preference is to lynch people that do that to children.
Amen.
Please, let's practice our preferences.
Yeah.
It's no, that's not okay. I mean, I don't care what gets normalized or what gets accepted, what gets legal or not. I see someone hurting a kid like that, I'm going to take him out right then and there. And there's and it's going to be in probably the most brutal and painful way I can imagine at the time.
I hear you.
Agree.
I hear you.
And I don't really care what happens to me after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always say
worth
I'll do
it.
okay on the inside if I take out somebody who hurts a kid.
Oh, yeah,
No,
we'll be fine.
yeah.
We'll be fine.
Yeah.
I think that kind of circles back to our our dietary choices as well, because I think a lot of the decline in the psychological aspect of humanity has happened quite a bit due to a lot of the poisons, a lot of the chemicals, a lot of the dysregulation that is causing these imbalanced psychosis
Mhm.
to be able to be prominent in our society. People are not functioning from a mentally well state as prevalent as they did, say, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago. I think we have created a lot of mental disorders that are causing these to be more prominent issues now, because our food system, the things that are in our water, the stuff that is been allowed, people now think it's okay. Well, because I feel this way. Well, yeah, if you feel like you want to be a cat walking down the street, yeah, go ahead and be a cat. But do you think 100 years ago you would have wanted to be a cat? Like,
Mhm.
Or
you
society would have
know,
accepted you being a cat.
I mean,
Mhm.
maybe they did. I don't know.
Maybe.
Who knows? Society
Yeah.
100 years ago was weird.
Also
It
that.
was also
Yeah.
weird.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
like too much estrogen in water, right? We know specifically
Mhm.
in North
Mm.
America, Australia, we've got, as you said, like glyphosate's on everything.
Yeah.
You
And
have
that's an
to
endocrine
actually,
disruptor.
yeah.
Atrazine.
So you
Yeah.
have to look at like what is the
Uh,
actual chemical functioning of these individuals prior to them saying, "Well, this is
mm,
just who I am." Is it, or if we neurologically start to piece and part that, into compartmentalized aspects of self, like what are your
mm,
neurotransmitters looking like? What are your endocrine system look
mm,
like?
Right.
Before we just say, "Well, this is just who I am."
mm,
I'm
Yeah,
the M
yeah.
on the LGBTQ. No,
Mm.
let's take a
exactly.
look at like what's happening inside of you, and have a conversation about the dangers to society that you present.
Yeah.
Well, there's that too. Yeah, I mean, people. I'm a firm, very libertarian in this, that people should be, adults should be allowed to do what they feel is right for them, as long as they are not hurting
Harming
other
other
people,
people.
infringing on
Yeah.
their person or rights or property and things like that.
Mhm.
And that absolutely infringes on other people's rights, property, and person. So, that's a non-starter for me. But the thing is that, I mean, we are seeing a difference in how people are being raised. Our hormones are completely different. We have almost half or less than half in some areas of the testosterone in men now in their 20s as 60-year-old men in the 1970s, right? So that's not genetic. That's environmental. Something's happening.
Exactly.
You can only get vitamin D3 from the sun or from animal fat. And those are the two things we've been told to avoid like the plague for the last 50 years.
Mhm.
And what's happening, people aren't developing properly. They're not as healthy as they were. Vitamin D is a hormone. It's a sex steroid. It's derived from cholesterol, just like all your other sex steroid hormones.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it's a precursor to other hormones as well. And so you get deficient in vitamin D, and you get deficient in these other hormones as well. It has many other properties as well. But it's also required for normal differentiation during puberty. So it's what sort of gives sort of the classical male and female builds. It broadens out the shoulders in men, and it keeps the hips narrow. So you get that classic V shape appearance, bodybuilder sort of appearance. And in women, it narrows the waist and broadens the hips. So you get that sort of classic hourglass figure, which is probably why there's so many bikini models coming out of Brazil, because they're in the sun and they eat meat all the time, right?
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
So that's vitamin D. And now you get these kids coming through puberty, getting into their late teens, early 20s, and they're just stick figures,
Mhm.
So you have all these androgynous sort of looks to people, and they haven't developed properly during puberty. That's hormonal, and so they're not getting the hormonal inputs that they should have genetically.
Mhm.
And so we can talk about how people feel inside, and that's a completely separate matter. Their bodies and their brains and their hormonal systems are not developing to their genetic design.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
so, is this their genetics that are telling them that they feel a certain way, or is this their environment affecting their hormones, which
Mm.
affects their genetic expression? Because those are two very different things. The difference between us now and us at 25 is not our genetics, even though we look, feel, and act differently than we did when we were 25.
Do we?
It's our genetic expression is very different. Well,
We're all pretty much the same age, all three of us, I think. So,
yeah,
um,
but but that's the thing. But our genetic expression is different,
mhm,
right?
Right.
And so we have the exact same genes,
mhm.
but different ones are turned on and turned off.
Yeah.
And hormones have a big part to play in that. They go, especially your sex steroid hormones, they go in and they actually physically change the expression of your genes. They turn on and off different genes. And so if you scramble your hormones around, you're actually scrambling your genetic expression around. You're changing your genes. You are changing the type of person that you should be and would become had you had normal hormonal patterns and genetic expression. So it's a huge impact. It's not just, oh, I didn't get enough B12, which is also important, but it has far-reaching impact for the rest of your life.
Mhm. Well, we were just discussing as we jumped on this, I was saying, I, as a young girl, I was 13, was put on the birth control pill to control a cycle. And then did a number of years of varying birth control pills and then a number of years of IUDs. Exactly as you described, I think until I was 21 years old, I was probably 5 feet tall and maybe 80 pounds soaking wet. And I was very stick thin. I had and I tease and I say, oh, I came into myself in my 20s, because I stopped taking all of these birth pills and and all of a sudden I grew 5 inches at 21 to 5'6", and then I started to develop more of a female body and whatever. But it's very interesting to think back now with the knowledge that I have, had my parents known better, how that would have impacted me. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, how many tens of millions of people would have done the same thing? So, I'm having heavy periods and it's painful. Okay, well, we don't want that, so we'll stuff you full of hormones that are completely inappropriate for your age and development. And how could that not have an impact in your life?
Mm-hmm. For sure. I made a great cheerleader. I was pretty tiny, but other than that, was very strong.
Speaking of that, I had a fairly similar, because I was vegan vegetarian almost my whole childhood into adolescence. Horrible experience. And when I finally was introducing a little bit of meats and dairies, finally, of course, puberty hit like that and developed. And I remember, speaking of cheerleading, I went from being a flyer. Within a year, I became a base. They were like, no more, because I wasn't this scrawny little rail of an undeveloped, person, which was so funny. So
You are too
definitely.
top heavy for the skies, my friend.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, that too. That too.
But I mean, we're perfect. We're living instances, right? North American women, and this is exactly the impact that it had. These were the solutions. I live in a different country than you, but we're, similar situations, and that was all the solution for both of us. It was, here you go. It's under nutrients. It's whatever. I'm very fortunate. My Romanian parents fed me a pretty meat-based diet. I found out I was a carnivore baby. I didn't know. My mom just didn't know anything different, so she just blended meat and gave me meat when I was a little baby, probably saving grace. But
Nice.
had I faced those other challenges of the families that ate a bunch of pizza and everything else while I was on birth control at 13 years old, who knows what my development would have looked like. So
yeah. Well, it's really sad. I mean, the impact is, we have no idea, the reach of impact that. Certainly the nutrition, I mean, that's just a catastrophic, but just the hormones, giving kids hormones like that. I mean, would you give a young boy who's, scrawny, would you give him a bunch of testosterone cream, while he's going through puberty? That would be insane. So why are you giving a girl estrogen and progesterone? That's it's insane. So, I mean, it's not good in adulthood either, but it's especially bad when you're developing, going through puberty. That's absolutely catastrophic. I mean, when you screw up your hormone levels, you can actually change. I mean, you notice that you came off these things and you grew. You can suppress growth. You can stunt your growth. In boys, it actually can seal off their growth plates, and
Wow.
and then you don't grow anymore, right? I remember, back when I was in high school age, sort of 17, 18, stuff came out on the market. There was just like Tribulus and DHEA and androstenedione, things like that. And those were supposed to boost testosterone. So a lot of like athletes and rugby players and things like that I knew would like take that. And I was like, okay, I'll try it. And it definitely felt like it did something. And especially androstenedione, that was crazy. That's actually what the East German women's Olympic swim team, like in the 60s, that one where they were all like, they just crushed the Americans by like 20 meters,
Yes, I remember seeing a video on that.
Yeah, apparently they were all taking like androstenedione amongst all the other cocktail of things like that. So it's proandrogenic. And but the thing is when you're young and you got a bunch of, you got testosterone screaming out of your ears, like you don't need that. And you get more of this stuff, and it can convert over into estrogen and DHEA in particular. If you have too much of that converts more strongly into estrogen than testosterone for men. Estrogen shuts off your growth plates. So I was convinced to try some of this, like DHEA, things like that. It was over the counter. You just get it at GNC. It's still over the counter. You get it on Amazon. But so I tried that, and took that for a while. And then stopped it after a few months. But fun fact, I am the exact same height that I was at 17 when I tried that. Exact same height. I've not grown since. And then you see other people that like you kept growing at 20, 21. Erlen Holland, he went carnivore when he was 20 years old, and he grew another 5 inches over the next couple of years. And when he was 25, he still grew another 3/4 of an inch. And so I think that's probably where that changed for me, because I went carnivore when I was 20. Like, why the hell didn't I grow? Probably because that had already shut off my growth plates. So I'd probably be like 6'6", 6'8", or something like that. And it's just been
Dr. Baker size.
Yeah, and the Hall of Fame by now.
I noticed that there's definitely something with that in general with like my son. So in my family, on both sides of my family, I have giant men. My father's 6'4". My uncles are anywhere between 6'4" to 6'6". My grandparent on my mom's side, 6'4". My son's father is 6'4". So I have this like running, you should at least be 6'4", like at least. My son's 5'10", my oldest son, my 18-year-old. And I kind of go, okay, what happened? Like, not that anything's wrong with him only being 5'10", but when you look at the genetic profiles that we're pulling from, it's like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. We don't have anyone under 6 foot in our family before now. Now my son's generation, and I think I have one uncle that's right at 6 foot. And not that was an expected experience, because obviously extreme height was not very common for many years. But when I'm looking at the genetic profile of what we've had for at least 3 generations back, to go, wait a minute, now why is my son almost a foot and like close to a foot shorter than everybody else that's kind of coming out? And I started looking at, okay, well, I wasn't the healthiest person in general when he was growing up. He was receiving a lot of standard things. He was drinking a lot of, quote, tap water when he was young. He was getting all of these, disruptors into his system that my grandparents didn't have. My aunts and uncles, most of them were very fortunate. I mean, I think my mom's family, they finally got plumbing in their house before she moved out at 18. My mom was only born in the 60s. So she was already like the weird one in her generation where they're like, you don't have plumbing? Right? But I'm like, I told her, I said, you don't know how much that helped you out, Mom. Like, now that I'm like learning so much about all of these different things. I'm like, you lived off of well water from Arizona.
Mm,
You had all your own food. You had all of this though, but they weren't getting all of that like fluoride additives into their drinking system. They weren't
mm,
getting all of
mm,
these things. They were getting natural foods. They cooked with pork fat. They cooked with, the eggs that they had. They ate the eggs that they had, all of it, the whole thing.
mm.
I'm like, I don't think you realize how much that saved you in comparison to a lot of other people that were coming up in that generation. Where I look at a lot of my other family members, like on my husband's side, who didn't grow up that way, and you kind of go, wow, there's a big difference. There's a huge
Mm.
difference to what they're experiencing.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is that, he's still young. He can still keep growing, so if he's eating properly now, there's a good chance, unless his growth plate's closed, which, unless you're taking some DHEA, probably good, so yeah, don't
The
let him do
DHEA,
that.
so I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
come on, kid,
Yeah.
we got this.
Yeah. But the thing is though too is, especially kids that age, you're like, I want more testosterone. Well, more testosterone equals more estrogen as well. And when your testosterone gets up to a certain level, you get more starts turning into estrogen, and you will shut off your growth plates, and you will stunt your growth. This is why, they recommend, kids not taking testosterone, not doing things like steroids, because that converts estrogen, and bang, that's it. You're frozen in time, that you're not getting bigger than that. And so that's obviously something to be avoided as well. But eating properly. I mean, again, Erlen Holland grew 5 inches at 20. I have friends that did that as well. I have a buddy of mine who played for the Seahawks, and in high, he's a really good football player in high school. Very very technical, very smart, very good athlete. But ended up going to college on a wrestling scholarship, and then grew like 5 inches in his first year or two at college, and then started playing football again, and ended up getting drafted. So it can happen, and so it's possible that he eats properly, and that he can absolutely start growing. One of the main things that I think stunts growth is carbohydrates. Yeah. What's that? Sorry.
I said, I'm sending him this clip. See,
Yeah. I think
Mom
one of the
didn't
main
say it. Somebody else did.
Yeah. I think one of the main things that is stunting growth right now is carbohydrates, because carbohydrates raise insulin, and insulin blocks growth hormone. Growth hormone makes you grow. It makes your long bones grow, so it makes you taller, so it makes you wider, it makes your frame bigger, it makes your bones larger. People try to confuse others because they don't understand the physiology. Because it is true that a small amount of insulin, like the amount that you make under normal circumstances as a carnivore, stimulates IGF-1. IGF-1 does a lot of the growing part that we attribute to growth hormone. Growth hormone goes to your liver, stimulates IGF-1. Insulin can sensitize your liver to that growth hormone and make more IGF-1 at low physiologically normal levels. And if you eat protein, that can give you a bit of a bump of insulin, and that can further increase your IGF-1 production. However, you go too far up, and then you actually overwhelm those sensors, those insulin sensors on your liver, and now you start to lower. Your body says, no, too much, and you actually start reducing the amount of insulin receptors on there. And then you're not only blocking growth hormone production, but now you're blocking its action and production of IGF-1 as a result. And so I have a lot of patients who are just on a standard diet, just eat, I'm eating so clean and this, that, and the other, but they have all these carbs and been doing this for years. Their IGF-1 is always depressed. Their growth hormone is always depressed. Most of their other hormones are depressed as well. And then I put them on a ketogenic carnivore diet. And it's important to be a ketogenic carnivore because there are a lot of hormone disruptors with plants and things like that. They can disrupt these things. But also the proteins from meat are a different caliber and class than the proteins you get from plants. And first of all, there's difference in bioavailability, but also the different types of amino acids. Even though you can get what's called a complete protein, because you get all the essential amino acids, there's actually some that are conditionally essential, like carnitine and taurine, that we make, but not everybody makes enough at all times and all circumstances. And so you need this from your diet as well. but also the different combination of and proportion of these amino acids actually makes a huge difference. And so we actually have studies showing this, that when people are eating equal matched protein levels, grams, from a plant-based source versus an animal-based source, you get more IGF-1 from the animal-based source, right? Because it stimulates that IGF-1 more. And so for all these different reasons, you just eat meat, you cut out carbs, your growth hormone's going to go up, and your IGF-1 is going to go up. You are going to grow if you're in puberty and your growth plates are open. And you eat carbs and raise your insulin and kind of stuff that down.
I want a little taller. I'm 42. I'm too old to keep growing, but
yeah, well, you never know. I don't know. I've seen some weird things. I've seen some super weird things. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. Selena looks prepared. Look at her.
Am I prepared?
Always.
Okay. Off wall topic, personal topic, get to know Chaffee topic. Do you have any irrational fears? Something that nobody should be afraid of, but for some reason you are? I don't
love
get the
this.
feeling you do, but I even got a crinkle nose out of that question. God.
Yeah.
Mine is
I
spiders.
can't think of anything. I don't, not like fears, I'm not
I didn't think.
I mean, I've had a I've never been a big fan of height, not heights, but mostly depths. I don't like looking down at a deep ravine or something like that. But it's not like first of all, that's not irrational because you die, and second of all, it's, you just deal with it. It's not like I get a phobia and I can't do that. I've always been of the opinion that you sort of attack your weaknesses and make them your strengths. So, I had a big problem with that as a kid. That was not fun. But then I just sort of made myself do these things. Rappelling down cliffs and rock climbing, bungee jumping, things like that, just to deal with it and make it not a big deal. But I guess it's not a fear. Like I'm not afraid of it, but probably the only thing in medicine that ever creeped me out was a placenta, and that freaked me out. We went into it's like a blue meat lily pad, alien lily pad. Like, it was just like I was like, what the hell is that? And it just creeped me out, man.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
It's obviously I got over it, but like when I first saw it, I sort of understood what it was. But I came into the anatomy lab and there's just this like blue alien meat lily pad there. I'm like, what what is that? And I was just freaking out, like, what the hell is that? And then when I was doing my maternity ward rotation, we were on the maternity ward for a week, and in our obstetrics rotation. As you're there and you're delivering babies, and you're there with the midwives and they're delivering, they show you, and then you're delivering after that, and and that was something I had to sort of like, okay, all right, yep, this is fine. But then when this is sort of probably more information than most people want, but when you sort of go in, you have a delivery. And you tick that box, like, are you okay with us using this for scientific purposes and testing and all that sort of stuff? They then sell that for like $50,000, by the way. That's big money. They don't give you that. You're not allowed to sell body parts in most Western countries. And so I was like, well, shouldn't be able to profit off of your own body. Only other people can profit off of your own body. Like, oh, that makes sense. If one of your family members dies and gets their organs harvested in their body, it's not just their organs; it's just almost every single piece of tissue on the body gets used, and the body's really destroyed after that. The hospital makes I think one paper I read on the subject was about $6 million. The hospital profits about $6 million, or there's $6 million of money generated. You're not getting that. Your family's not getting that. Can you imagine? If the family got half of that. That could change lives. I mean, you have a family member that passes away, but then that sets up all these other things. I mean, I guess you have problems with, doing a suicide so that you can pass that to your family, or someone killing a family member or something horrible like that. But there's I mean, people kill people for insurance purposes and things like that, and they get caught. So
That's
I don't.
already
Yeah, it's already a thing that gets dealt with.
right.
But I think that's ridiculous that they get all this stuff for that. So placentas are one of them.
Well, and the
And
fact that it's not even, like, disclosed to you that that's what's happening, it's
which
just,
is pretty
"Hey,
messed up. Yeah.
can you just, like, donate this? It's fine. You don't
It's for
need it.
science. It's
It's
for
for science. You don't need
scientific
it."
exploration. You're like, no.
Right, and you
Like,
just picture like,
you need
oh, it's gone to like a new home that needed it.
Mhm.
Like, well, right? Like you
Yeah.
just tell your brain whatever to feel better about the
Mhm.
scenario, but
Yeah. Yeah.
not quite.
Well, so all that, but then at the end of the day, what happens to it? We get these placenta after you deliver, you put it in a bag and double, triple bag it, and then you send the medical student to go drop it off at the depository, and there's like laundry bins, like hotel laundry bins, full of bags of placentas, and like they would just toss them in there, and you hear this just wet splash of these placentas into like a pit with like 1,000 other placentas in it. You're like, oh my god! It was just like all that ick
So much
came
of
back
it.
from the first time I saw a placenta. It was awful, and so that's not an irrational fear. It's not a fear. It was just
We now
yucky.
know what gives you the
A
ick.
shock.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
ick
definitely.
is placentas for you.
Yeah, well, a whole bag of them. Yeah, like a bushel of placentas now. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know
yeah,
that
that's
I would like a bushel of placentas either.
It's the plopping description that kinda got me. I'm like, "Oh,
yeah. It was
that's"
a splash.
Yeah,
Actually made that noise. Splash.
it feels
Yeah.
like an accurate description.
Yeah.
Good
It's
morning,
not good.
everybody. Welcome to
Placenta talk.
You don't need coffee to wake up. You just have to listen to
Yeah.
horrible things.
That's right, that's
Guys,
right.
I feel start my day hard.
Okay, so another get to know Chafee moment. What is the most spontaneous thing you think you have ever done?
The most spontaneous thing?
Yep. Most spontaneous.
I'm here for these questions today, Selena.
We're literally
I,
getting
I, I,
nailed
do, I do a lot
moments.
of spontaneous things. I sometimes do things just, for the story, just say like, why not? That'd be sort of cool to talk about. I went to, I got a call and got told there was a disaster in Bangladesh and this sort of, ISIS territory and things like that. And I just said, okay, I'll go. And so I just sort of made arrangements and sort of went shortly after that. That was fairly spontaneous and probably not intelligent. And what else?
But
Yeah.
you help people. So I mean,
Mm.
I think there's the value of for me in
Good
stuff
fun.
like that. The
Yeah.
the value
just-
of no, you're fine. The value of the potential to do good or to create
Mhm.
something better outweighs the value of self-harm that could possibly happen
Mm.
in my brain.
Well,
Like
that was sort of the idea I had too. And and I wasn't married, I didn't have kids, so it was like, if I don't make it, then I'm at least I'm not abandoning a family. Well, I mean, my family, of course, was not happy about it, but and my niece, who I was very close with, took it very, very hard. I mean, she's obviously very, very worried for me. So, it was tough, and it was tough for them, which I didn't want, but I sort of felt that there were so many people that needed help, and I was in a position to help them, and I sort of have always been of the opinion that if you have the ability to help someone who really needs it, especially in like a life or death situation, you also have the responsibility to help them as well. And I think that, going back to our discussion on masculinity, that's part of that. That's part of that, going back to chivalry is like you have to be willing to lay down your life for the good of others that are, the good of the innocents that can't protect themselves and can't help themselves. And I sort of just did the math and I figured that, look, there's all these people. I'm sort of talking to them about how many people, like the different doctors that are there, are seeing a day and all the different things that they're doing. And when I was there, I could be seeing 90 people a day, and easily 60, 90. I mean, there were hundreds and hundreds of people lining up because a lot of these people were escaping, a literal genocide where they were getting massacred over in what's now Myanmar, formerly Burma. And, and they're telling us these stories about having their doors locked in the middle of the night and their houses being set on fire, and they're having to jump out of a burning building. Their family gets taken in the fire, and they get dumped, and they get shot at, and their family members that did get out, get shot down, and they got winged, but they got into the bushes and they were able to escape in the jungle, and then like hike 160 kilometers, 100 miles, to where these refugee camps are, to the border, and escape. And, the Myanmar government was trying to say, oh, well, no, these are all made up and all these sorts of things. But I saw the scars, and these stories that people are telling them was like, their scars match up. And there's way worse ones than that I don't tell people publicly because they are absolutely horrific and like Holocaust level horrific. Yeah. And they would just give people nightmares. And and then also the UN sort of went in and actually started finding mass graves with 10,000 people in it, 5,000 people in it, so it was like, this happened. This absolutely happened. And so, I just, sort of did the math on that and, how many people I could, help. And, and it was, could eat, and then, sort of the systemic sort of changes in the systems that they have there, which were, they did the best they could, but there were definitely things that it was like, hey, if you change these little things, this can really make a big difference. There's a book by Dr. Atul Gawande, who's he was an oncologic surgeon over at Brigham's Women's Hospital over in Massachusetts, associated with Harvard, and so. He had some really interesting books that I read. And, one of them was called The Checklist Manifesto. And it was all about just like using checklists to sort of better things. And so we use these in medicine now. We have checklists before we operate. We have checklists for nurses giving IVs and all these sorts of things. Pilots use checklists to get off the ground. And, architects use checklists to build these massive skyscrapers with hundreds of thousands of steps, yeah. Right? But that wasn't always the case. There was a time that in medicine we didn't have checklists for operations and for surgeries and things like that. And so even though all the steps, something gets missed, and that's a big mistake. And same with IV lines. So Johns Hopkins, it wasn't a tool; he was just writing about it. But there's a guy from Johns Hopkins who started just something the nurses were supposed to do anyway, which was look for redness. How long has it been there? If it's certain time, like 72 hours, it's like has to be taken out and recited, and look at this, and this, and this, and they know they're supposed to do that anyway, right? But now it's just okay, put it in a checklist, and then just every time you do it, just check. Okay, we did it. IV line infections dropped from something like 5,000 in 2 years to crap. Like 120.
Wow.
Right.
And it went from, I
remember reading it was something really drastic.
It dropped down to, I don't know, it was like a few, like IV thing like that. And or maybe it was like 2 or something like that. Anyway, so out of like the 2-year period, Johns Hopkins, which is, the number 1 hospital in the world most years, yeah. They found that they had like 5,000 infections, and thousands sort of people went septic, and like 120 sort of people died from that, just from IV line infections, totally preventable. And this changed from like 5,000 infections down to like something like ridiculous, like 2 infections and no deaths, something like that. But anyway, very, very big drop in infections. And then you started doing this at other hospitals, and all of them started seeing this massive drop. So, so that was one of the things that I did over there, was sort of say, hey, let's get a checklist and just, go through these sorts of things, because The conditions there are definitely needed. So just to describe, we saw like people explain to these nurses, okay, this is how you do an IV line. Okay, so you clean the area with an alcohol swab, right? Do a tourniquet, this and this, take this out, and then you try to do the IV line, right? But then they missed the concept, which was you need to keep everything sterile all the time because this can cause an infection. So they just sort of knew the steps. Okay, we just wipe that down, we do this. But let's say they can't get an IV line in that hand. This actually happened. I saw this multiple times. They would take the IV line. They were just like going for okay, no, can't do it. And they take it, they put it on the ground, and then they go to the other side, put the tourniquet on the other arm, take an alcohol swab and swab that vein down, pick it up off the floor, and then stick it into their vein. It was like, oh, well, I started to understand why everybody is inappropriately put on antibiotics every time they come to the hospital, because it's not so inappropriate.
Yeah.
You almost have to conditions, right? But the floors are so dirty. I mean, it's just, I don't know what it is, but there's someone that comes in every single day because it's dirt roads, dirt this, dirt that. People's feet are covered in dirt all the time. They track that in, so there's just dirt everywhere, and there's just someone like 3-4 times a day. One of the nurses that worked there just was sweeping up just piles of dirt throughout the hospital wards and getting them out. And so this is a very, very dirty ground, and they're putting this supposed to be sterile thing on the floor and then sticking it in their arm. It was like, right, okay. So I like to think that might have changed a few things and hopefully avoided some like infections that didn't need to happen. So the reality is that I sort of felt that I may die, but it's one person, whereas I could potentially help thousands of people. And so I just felt that I couldn't not go. But I felt it was probably about a 50-50 chance that I wasn't coming back. It was there's some dodgy times there. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, the ISIS was very, very active in that country, in that area at that time. They blew up a hotel because there was one American staying in it, and killed something like 70-80 people. 160 others got hurt to varying degrees. And so this was a no joke situation to get into. But we all do stupid things. But yeah, that's probably not even my most spontaneous thing, though. I mean, that was the only one that came to mind at the time.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think I'm in agreement with you. I grew up in a police family, and my dad and mom decided to move to a reserve up north for a number of years under the same mindset of the policing at the time was very violent there. There was a lot of conflict happening, and my dad was like, we gotta go. We're gonna go. And they went and they stayed 5 years, and had my mom not had birthing complications, I would have been born on a reserve way up north in Canada. And that's that. But yeah, I mean, I think it's the same thing as, when you have the opportunity to help, you run towards the fire, right? Like that's, even as women, I think Celine and I are probably similarly minded in that, if I was walking by somebody in need and there was nobody else, I would run in.
I am that somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the thing that is, I think, missing in general society nowadays. I don't think everybody has that go-to umph.
I don't think most people have that go-to umph.
And I mean, I hate to throw everything on our diet, but I think a lot of it has to do with that too.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this unconscious, subdued, like everything's okay, even though it's not. Kind of like, when airplanes give you the oxygen masks when they start to go down, that whole thing. You have this massive dose of almost pure oxygen. Well, what does that put you into? A state of absolute calm, somewhat euphoric, gentleness right before you're dying, basically, right?
The oxygen mask is not going to save you.
No, and I think people have a whole like misunderstanding about, the oxygen mask, even though this isn't supposed to be a conversation about the planes. But either way, we're here.
We're on the planes.
We're on the planes. But I think a lot of the dietary foods that we have now sort of cause that effect of complacency almost. So people don't have that drive or that initial like desire to go above and beyond, to do anything more, because they're in this chemical state of complacency. It's like, oh,
except when they're commenting on any one of our 3 content on social media.
Yeah.
Well, it's different when you can be a keyboard warrior, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's another one too. I mean, you get actually low testosterone is more strongly associated with like anger and aggression and frustration than normal or even slightly high testosterone. It's really high testosterone that's a problem, but it's low testosterone that's just as much of a problem. It's the imbalance that freaks your brain out and makes you act irrationally. But having just high optimal testosterone is actually quite calm. I have friends of mine that endocrinologists, and they have patients that the men were for one reason or another had very low testosterone. So then they put them on testosterone, and he said that I couldn't tell me how many times the next follow-up appointment, the second time I saw him after they put them on testosterone replacement therapy, that their wives came in with them and just said, "Thank you. He's so much nicer now." It's just like, it's so much better. And because he was just very grumpy and upset and just get really angry and triggered all the time. And you see that with vegans all the time. They are just frothing at the mouth, and it's not because they got high testosterone. I can tell you that. And, but what was it? Damn it. Just lost my train of thought. How did you lead that up with? Remind me again.
Oxygen on the
we
plane.
went in the planes.
That's what it was. Yeah. So
like, I don't know. We're going.
I would think about it this way. In ancient Rome, when the government would just sort of go too far, and the plebeians would get pissed off and just be like ready to revolt, they would hand out free bread and they would put on circuses and gladiatorial shows, right? So we have from that the saying bread and circuses. So when the government's messing up and they're trying to distract you and calm everything down, it's bread and circuses, bread and circuses. Just like Netflix and Uber Eats, it's the same thing. It's just like feed them junk, get them complacent, and just distract them with something shiny, right? And so that was something that they did to make people complacent and make them calm down and make them less likely to do something about their shitty situation. And they don't talk about that because it doesn't fit in that pithy statement of bread and circuses. But the other side of that coin was that they actually cut off the meat supply to Rome. So not only do they give them this complacency food, this dopamine food, they also cut off the food that was actually going to help them be healthier and more strong-minded about things. And that's exactly what we're seeing now. We're saying, oh, no, we can't eat meat. It's bad for you. It's bad for the environment. It's bad for this. It's bad for that. No, don't eat, just eat all these plants. Well, they eat meat, with impunity, because it's not about that. It's not about actually helping you or the planet or anything else. It's about helping themselves, keep you complacent, keep you towing the line and being easy to manipulate and control. And Bill Burr he's a comedian, he's a very funny guy. He had a bit about this like 20 years ago, where he thought that McDonald's was like this giant government psyop just to keep everybody suppressed and just not like actually go out and be prosperous and deal with the problems of the world. Because he said, he's like, yeah, you could wake up in the morning just ready to go. He's like, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to do this. I'm going to protest
Right.
this and this, this and this. I'm going to all this stuff. And then you have McDonald's and you just sit down on the couch. He's like, screw my dreams. I'm just going to sit here for a while and take a nap and all that sort of stuff. And,
So
that's,
true, though.
it's true. It's true. It's absolutely true. And I think
But
we've
you
all
see,
felt, I mean,
like, my
sorry, go
mom's
on.
next door neighbor is the same age as me, and
Mhm.
he looks about 15 years older. He's
Mhm.
very unfortunate because you can tell he's a good-looking guy, but like very overweight, and has not cooked a meal for himself in over 2 years. Everything is takeout.
Mm.
So he works from home. He orders all of his food, and I've watched the decline of this man to the point that, and I don't mean to hate because he's very lovely, but my 76-year-old mother cuts his lawn because he doesn't have the energy to do it. To be fair, my mom is Romanian strong, and
She's amazing.
Linda's amazing.
Mhm.
Linda is also a carnivore. Well, she's meat based. She'll eat some
We
fruit.
love Linda.
Linda, we love Linda. But my 76-year-old mother, there's your diet difference. My 76-year-old mother is cutting the lawn of a 42-year-old man because her energy
It
and
could be the other way
capacity,
around.
right,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
there. And she's like, well, I can't look at his lawn. It's disgusting. So she's like, I just go and I cut it for him. And it's like this emotional and he'll literally say, oh, Linda, just text me if you need me to cut the lawn if it's bothering you. And my mom was like, I'm not your mother. Why am I telling you to cut? You're an adult man. Go outside and cut your lawn. But I've
Yeah.
watched from when he started, he used to do things around his place. He would do his lawn cutting. He was like painting his wind shutters, whatever, things people do. And now it's just this like food decline. He's gained probably 70 pounds in the last year. And he's
Poor
now at the
bastard.
point, like, in the winter, he saw again, I told you I live in -40 because it's Canada.
Mhm.
My trunk got frozen shut, and I couldn't get my
The
trunk up.
door got frozen shut.
Yeah, my trunk was frozen shut in my car, even though my car
Jesus.
had been running with its auto starter. So my car was warmed. My trunk was still ice frozen shut. And he's sitting outside
Jesus. No,
smoking
thank you. Yeah.
and watching me trying to lift the trunk. Does he come over and offer? No. I had to put down my backseat, get inside of my own trunk, and kick the trunk lid up from inside my car. But just watching this man, who I'm aware is letting my 76-year-old mom cut his lawn, watching
Yeah.
me struggle physically. Like, I weigh 125 pounds. I'm not a big girl. And watching me physically struggle trying to lift this lid, not able to get it, doesn't once come over and be like, can I help? Period. Just this blatant carb-induced complacency that this guy was just like, oh, I'm going to smoke my joint and watch this girl struggle with her car. Like, okay, no, I'm not good. Oh, okay, good luck with that. Like, okay, this,
It's
Yeah.
that's the
pretty
state of
wild.
this, like, keep them entertained
Yeah.
situation
Yeah.
where, like, now this guy
Well,
doesn't even come outside.
yeah.
Like, he's just there.
Well, but that would have, if he had offered to help you, obviously that would have been toxic masculinity to assume
Right.
that you couldn't do everything
Poor
that he could do
girl.
as a man. Obviously, you're all
Right.
exactly equal and even. So, he would have. I mean, you should go to jail for a hate crime if he helped you with your trunk. Really?
Right. Well, you know what? To
I
be
mean,
In
fair,
Canada, he probably would.
I
Yeah.
was going to say, to be fair, my partner's Hispanic, and he's a
Mhm.
personal trainer. And he is at the point now where he's like, I'm almost afraid to train, because he's like, I'm afraid to touch a female client to help her move properly,
Mhm.
because he's like, I'm at the point where it's like, I have to know the client well enough. And he's like, but I'm a
Mhm.
trainer. Like, I need to sometimes be hands-on to show you a
Mhm.
movement. And he's like, but I'm at a point where I have to be so cautious because we're in Canada and he's, pretty, like, he's a big guy and he's super tattooed and he looks like he's from the Colombian militia. And he's like, I'm afraid some woman's going to be like, he touched me wrong or,
Mhm.
whatever. So, I mean, yeah, here in Canada, it's its own really magical journey. We live in Quebec, so it's not so bad, but it is, it's exactly what you said. Like, everything is toxically masculine. How dare you assume a woman can't lift the weight properly, or she's doing it, you're wrong for correcting her.
It's mansplaining.
Yeah,
Obviously,
you're
if your
mansplaining,
trainer
right?
tells you how to lift, even though she's paying him to teach them, obviously
Yeah.
that's mansplaining.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and I find that absolutely wild coming from a female who has worked mostly, and Jenny, I mean, you and I have very similar backgrounds, worked mostly in a quote man's world. I mean, I was a cross-country truck driver. I worked in automotive mechanics. I did engine startups for Hatteras yachts. So my work environment for a good portion of my life has always been around, male-dominated industries. And I will tell you, I would rather be overly mansplained than to just left to my own devices when I need help because, oh, God forbid I help you. It's like the reality of, can we do it? Yes. Is it possible? Sure. You offering help is not toxic. I mean, the fact that that's even a concept in our society is absurd. Just absurd in general, period, at all. Just stupidly absurd. Kind of leading into that discussion and sort of combining back into the concept of the extreme aggression that happens with vegans. And I'm not trying to pick on vegans specifically, but there was a comment in the comment section over here asking about how schizophrenia can be assisted with a proper diet. And I think although they are not all in the same, I think they are very correlated because of, mental capacity and proper cognition and functionality through dietary. What are your suggestions? I mean, I know we know what our typicals are, but what are your suggestions? What is your understanding about how this can help mental cognition for those that are dealing with mental disorders such as schizophrenia?
Well, I mean, we have interventional trials showing that if you put people on high fat, meat based ketogenic diets, that they improve from major psychiatric conditions, major depression, major anxiety, OCD, bipolar, even schizophrenia. And so we have in the literature examples where in these populations you can put these into remission or at least significantly improve their condition. And there are case reports published about the same, specifically schizophrenia. There's a branch of psychiatry called the metabolic psychiatry, where they look at this. They look at your metabolism. They look at how your body is working and functioning, and finding that improving your metabolism, improving your mitochondria in particular, holds huge sway over your mental health and cognition certainly as well, and that your mitochondria run your neurons and run your brain and run your cells. I mean, they travel through your bloodstream. They go from different tissues and organs. They go from cell to cell. It's actually pretty crazy. I sort of think of the mitochondria as sort of like the actual people, and we're sort of like a ship that they're running. This sort of like bio-organic sort of ship that they're sort of running around, like flying up and down like a Star Trek sort of thing, going up and down to different floors and doing different things and sort of running everything. And it sort of seems what it's like. I mean, they're running the ship. They're absolutely running the ship. And so when they start dying, when they start getting damaged, they can't function now. Now they can't steer the ship, and things are going wrong. And now you're not, pulling the line and moving the sail and, doing all these other sorts of things. And you get problems. And then if that's happening in your brain has problems. And then you start seeing things and hearing things that aren't there. And your ability to interpret reality in the world around you changes and becomes difficult because the inputs that you're getting from the outside world are not working properly because your neurons can't digest them properly. So you fix that. So you stop doing things that damage your mitochondria, and you start doing things that improve your mitochondria. You get proper sleep, you get you get rid of all these different sorts of mitochondrial toxins, like sugar, like carbohydrates that can damage your mitochondria. Deuterium can damage your mitochondria. Being ketogenic lowers deuterium. Fructose itself damages mitochondria. And then different plant toxins directly damage well. being in ketosis allows your insulin to come down, and you can go through autophagy at this point. It's insulin that blocks autophagy. And so people say, well, you need to fast for a certain number of days so that you can break down these old damaged cancerous cells and then make new ones and new healthy mitochondria as well. All you have to do is stop eating carbs, because it's just when your insulin comes down low enough, not because you have an absence of dietary calories, for lack of a better word, energy is a better word. It's because your insulin is down. And so you are going through autophagy, mitophagy, and mitogenesis, even though you're 4,000 calories a day of ribeye steaks, right? So you're still getting a ton of energy, but you're in autophagy because your insulin is low. And studies have shown that after 3 months on a ketogenic diet, that you have 4 times the number of mitochondria, and they're 4 times as effective. So that's going to get a massive boost in your mitochondrial function. That's we see in these people that over the course of several weeks, you start seeing these conditions improve and improve and improve and improve. And the longer they go, the better that seems to be. Now, I think there's more to it than that. I touched on it with the plant toxins damaging your mitochondria, but they could probably that. There are a lot of neurotoxic compounds that plants make. Plants make about 1 million different compounds that we've categorized, classified, and named, right? This is not a guess, and this is not my assertion. This is a hard biological fact. And many of those are neurotoxic and damage your brain and damage the normal functionality and impede the functionality of your mitochondria in your brain as well. And so I see people improve on ketogenic diets for mental health issues, cognition, etc. Another reason for cognition specifically, getting all the nutrients you need, the vitamin B12, the D3, the preformed retinol, choline, the creatine, the carnitine, the taurine, the DHA, the EPA, the saturated fat, and the cholesterol, all those things your brain requires for proper function and to grow, rebuild, and maintain itself, and to maintain normal function and cognition. But I see people improve on ketogenic diets from a psychiatric point of view, but then I see them improve even more when they dump the plants as well. So there's obviously something in plants that seems to be holding your brain back. That's something that Jordan Peterson has spoken about himself, that just going ketogenic with Michaela, his daughter, they're just eating steaks and a big salad, and that's just all they were eating. And it fixed almost all of his issues, dropped a bunch of weight, was feeling a lot better. Autoimmune issues were improving. And then, but he was still had crippling anxiety, where he couldn't get out of bed for days at a time. And I'm sure depression was mixed in with that as well. But he just dropped salads, and in 3 weeks it was gone, right? And he even said, he's like, salad was doing this to me?
Right.
Like, yeah, that stuff is awful. And so I think there's definitely something in there, some sort of neurotoxin that's contributing to this as well.
I think from my own experience, very, very similar. I mean, I healed quite a lot when I called it keto, but I was closer to like a stricter animal-based keto. My keto dietary regimen at that time, the only other things I included were I would have some salads once in a while, not even like regularly. I would have blueberries, and then the rest of it was a fairly high-fat ketogenic, meats, fats. I maybe had salad at the time twice a week, maybe, like in comparison to what I had eaten all the time. And I healed quite a bit. It wasn't until after I actually became full carnivore that all of the residual issues that I seemed to have been dealing with were like gone. And it was like, well, wait a minute. I already was eating so clean. I already wasn't having a bunch of processed bullshit. I was, like healthy. And I had already like healed so much. There couldn't have been more. That was my perspective. It couldn't be any more. I've already done so much. And when I decided to do carnivore, and the fact that it got better was like, oh, holy crap, what are we doing to ourselves, people? Because this got better. And even like this state of, I don't want to call it euphoria, but this state of just general happiness that
Say it.
exists.
Say the term, Selena. Say it. Say it. Call it carnivore calm.
The
It
carnivore
is
calm.
though.
And
It is.
it's interesting how that happens, where before I used to be so easily triggered, so upsettable. My I do have sensory perception disorder and all of that stuff. And even being on a high keto diet, I was still very um, triggered, would be the best way to say it. I would still have a lot of those issues very prevalent throughout my day. Since being carnivore, those have reduced to almost non-existent comparative to even just being keto. It's like,
Mm.
what are we doing to ourselves, people? Like, really? Do we really need the
Mm.
salad? Is it really that, like, do you like it that much?
It's not even good.
They don't.
Doesn't even taste
They
good.
usually like the dressing, like the dressing
Yeah.
might taste good. Just
Yeah,
a bunch of bitter, nasty plants don't taste good. Just a bunch of random ass leaves. Like,
I
no.
just want to see a person eat like a thing of iceberg lettuce with nothing on it. Like, just sit down and eat like a head of lettuce and tell me it's
Yeah.
good. It's not. There's no way.
Yeah, I mean, I think people would have done that at one point or the other, but would you do that every day and just forego the salad dressing for the rest of your life? I mean, I don't think anybody's gonna really do that,
I ate it
And
for
maybe they do, but it's still
about.
gross.
The salad dressing is what I was eating. The oils, the
Yeah.
fat.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, because your brain wanted that fat. Because everyone's doing super lean otherwise, and like it's just it's something. It's any port in a storm, even though they're not all the right fats, and some of them are very wrong fats. They're still your brain saying, "Hey, you need this, eat this."
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the thing is, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you've seen how your life is before and after, you don't think that that's a fluke. It's just like, okay, I've been eating this way my whole life. I stopped eating all this crap that they told me was the best thing for me to eat, that I should eat because we're obviously descended from rabbits. And, and then obviously, you can't feel good eating meat. You're going to get sick and all these sorts of things. But then people don't, and it massively improves their life, and they come off blood pressure medications, diabetes medications, autoimmunity medications, and more and more and more and more. And they get their lives back. And then it's, but you're going to get sick, you're going to get this, and they don't, So, okay, well, we know that's wrong, right?
Yeah.
So your theory is bad, right? If theory is only as good as what it's able to predict, and what you're predicting isn't happening, so obviously your theory is bad.
Okay.
And then the counter to that is, but you just wait, 40 years from now, you're going to get colon cancer. I'm like, well, no,
Take a look at Maggie. Maggie's doing fine out there in Alberta, rich and away at 60 years on carnivore.
Yeah.
I hate
exactly.
to say, my spitefulness shows up when people make those comments on my posts. We'll see in 40 years, and I'm like, yeah, I hope you make it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, in 40 years, I'm sorry, based off of the trajectory of me shifting my life and the improvements I have, I'm more likely to make it that 40 years. In fact, I might help you. I might help you wheelchair you into the hospital for you. I'll walk you there. No problem.
It's I mean, it's frustrating. I'm facing my mom's neighbor right now, who's a researcher. She's not, I don't mean to throw a quotation. She's a researcher, but she's quite adamant that our diet is going to kill us from cancer. Cancer is her thing. So all the studies I've sent her, because she keeps telling me there's no studies that support carnivore. And obviously
there's literally 800 specifically on cancer.
Just pound me with it, right?
She's a cancer researcher. She doesn't even know the cancer literature. The vast majority of studies show that there's absolutely no correlation even between even processed meat.
Studies that show a potential relationship but zero causation.
There's about 30 studies that show a collective 18% increased risk association. In these epidemiological studies, less than a 200% increased risk association is basically nothing. It's just background noise, and those were the studies that were the weakest design, most poorly executed. Most of them relying on food frequency questionnaires, asking them to try to think about what they ate in the last 4 years,
Yeah.
I mean, and then, the vegan proponents, they know that they're full of shit, because you know what they say, they try to critique all these different studies, and they have randomized controlled trials with 10,000 patients. Well, but there's this flaw, there's this and this. You can always find a flaw in a study. You know, those studies that they quote, these food frequency questionnaires. You know how they present those? It says, well, this was a study that was, followed these people and it with with verified nutritional this and this every 2 to 4 years and blah 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 blah. It's all verified and this and that. It's a goddamn survey that asks them how many times a week do they eat chicken wings on average for the last 4 years. What the hell kind of question is that? How can you ever answer that accurately? If I have chicken wings once every 4 months, how can I answer that?
Exactly. And what kind of chicken wings are we specifying? Are they homemade?
Yeah,
are
is
they
it
from
breaded?
A
Is it a bunch of sauce and garbage and things like that?
Yeah.
So those 30 or so studies that showed that very weak correlation that didn't reach a statistical validity of 200% increased risk association. They were those kinds that they were just these garbage studies, and they they didn't separate out people that ate more meat and also smoked and also drank and exercised less and had all these other sorts of behaviors that weren't very good.
Well, like what kind of meat, right?
Yeah, and but that's the thing. Pizza has meat on it as a topping, therefore pizza's meat.
Right.
And you go fast food like McDonald's, yeah, that's meat because there's meat in there. A Big Mac meal, I will probably blow people's minds right now. A Big Mac meal is practically vegan. You have this tiny little sliver of a meat patty. It's like 2 ounces. You have 3 bread buns. You have a bunch of sugary sauces, seed oil mayonnaise, lettuce and tomato, French fries deep fried in seed oils, formerly trans fats, and get some trans fats in there for good measure as well when you're heating the seed oils at that high heat and keep reusing it. And then you got this big ass sugary drink. Over 90% of those calories are from plants. That's practically vegan. You take out that little sliver of meat, now it is vegan. Right? So how are you blaming that on meat? Right? The meat is the only saving grace in there. It's the only thing that actually had some damn nutrition in it. And so you have 30 studies that show this weak garbage association that's barely even registered. And you have over 800 studies that show absolutely none whatsoever. Even ones using food frequency questionnaires, like McMaster University did something called the PURE study. And what they found was, and again, using food frequency questionnaires, but not doing it in an intentionally biased and dishonest way like they do Walter Willett's nurses studies and Gardner at Stanford. I mean, these are both self-avowed vegan evangelists, right? And they're heavily funded by the processed food industry. They work closely with the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Just the list goes on. I mean, these people are not doing honest work, and they're not trying to do honest work. They're trying to push an agenda. So then you look someone else that uses Walter Willett's paradigm of using food frequency questionnaires like McMaster, but they're not looking at it in a way that they can manipulate the data to vilify something. They're just saying, hey, what does the data show? Found absolutely no increased risk association with everything. And they actually found that meat was protective against forming cancer in their same methodology, right? So, and then obviously there were much better studies as well. In that study that looked at that systematic review from the University of Washington, published a few years ago, like around 2020, 21, something like that. 22 maybe? Anyway, around there. They found that not only was there absolutely no increased risk association between even processed meat and cancer, and certainly not unprocessed red meat and cancer, but they found absolutely no association with any disease whatsoever, including cardiovascular disease. So, it's for a researcher, and I will put that in quotes because she obviously hasn't done her research, to not understand that the largest studies that have been done on this and the preponderance of studies that have been done on this show the opposite of what she's saying. It means she's really, really bad at her job, and she's extremely ignorant in her own damn field. So what the hell kind of research can she be doing? And she may be a lovely person, but she has been hard done by her education. She should probably ask for her money back for whatever shitty ass degree that she got that told her this.
Can we do
You
that?
know, the sadder part of that is, yeah, first of all, I want my money back from all my shitty degrees. Second of all, you know, the sadder part of that is she's Indigenous, and apparently researching Indigenous diets in Canada is the saddest part of that entire, yeah.
So, I mean, is she aware that like the cancer rates in Indigenous Canadian populations were essentially zero until they started eating plant-based? And then you start seeing these 20-year periods through the 1950s, 1970s, 1970s, 1990s, that the cancer rates are just steadily going up. That's tough because
We're
the thing
aware
is,
of it.
I'm sorry, ma'am. If you ever watch this show, you are on blast.
I am going to be sending her this show just so we're all apprised of that, because as far as I'm concerned, like, this has been a definitely a hard argument, and going carnivore helped my mom immensely. That's where this whole argument started, is because she's trying to be protective of my mom. And you know, it decreased. For example, my mom has terrible osteoarthritis in her feet, and she was falling. It was so bad, and she was like falling down from pain. And going carnivore for 30 days took her pain from like a 20 out of 10 to a 1. And my mom's like, I don't have pain in one of my feet at all, and the other foot hurts like mildly sometimes. And for some reason, this has been like triggering for her neighbor, who now feels the need to try and like just dismantle this conversation. And I'm like, first of all, you're not even a vegan. Why are you so mad? You eat meat too. Second of all, if you've seen the improvement, you can see that my mom's now out mowing the next door neighbor's lawn, not falling down from pain. Like, why are we angry about that? I'm not entirely sure what's making us mad, right? And she's like, well, I'm going to die from cancer. And I was like, I'm 76. I'm going to die from something. Like, oh well.
Well, but I mean, she was gonna die from something else a hell of a lot sooner than she was gonna die from cancer in 30 years, 40 years. You know, so you know, trade off. You know, even if you were to you know, get cancer, which you're not, you know, how would that not be the better choice, right? You get chemo now and radiation now, with the understanding that in 20 years you're probably going to get another cancer from that chemo and radiation. So don't do chemo and radiation because it's going to give you cancer in 20 years. Okay, idiot, it's going to help the cancer now.
Yeah.
Right? And so even if it does do that, it, you know, it sort of, you know, pushes the goalposts another 20 years. Yeah, exactly. So, you know, but that's the thing, you know, I'm sure this woman means very well, and that's the problem, is that she's meaning very well and doing the very wrong thing. And so because people are going to be listening to her and going like, oh gosh, I'll listen to you because you care so much, she's going to hurt them. You know, and
what we're consistently seeing in this space, though, is like, I know when I'm coaching people, they come and they're like, my family hates this, and that, all of us, right? We're all facing these, and I'm going to say, I throw you at people all the time. I'm constantly like, just watch Dr. Chaffee's videos. This will help, right? Because people, like, let's be transparent. People automatically trust the doctor in front of the name, and so when we're like, hey, this guy's earned a medical degree, this is a practicing functional doctor. The way I got my mom onto carnivore was showing her your videos. That's how I got her. She wouldn't listen to me. I convinced her with you. And some of those early videos that we were talking about at the beginning of this show. So I think exactly to the point of like, my mom's neighbor is well-meaning. We come across these people in people's lives all the time who are going carnivore, and everybody's like, oh, I mean so well. And they're driving this indoctrinated misinformation where they don't know what they're talking about. They're not reading actual studies. They have no education in this whatsoever. They're listening to the Canadian food guide or the American food guide or the Australian food guide, or what, you know, where it's still saying eat 56 pieces of bread a day. These people are convinced that drinking red wine is good for them. And yet they're sitting and talking about, you know, colorectal cancer and cholesterol and everything else. I think that's one of the biggest challenges for people in this space sticking with the diet, is all of the well-meaning people that they come across.
Yeah. Well, you know, and that's the thing, you know, I mean, she has a responsibility to actually look into this and look at the other side of the argument, because she is in a position of authority. She's researching this, you know, and she's making recommendations to people. First of all, if she's not a doctor, she shouldn't be giving medical advice, right? But second of all, you know, if she is is putting this forward, especially for her community. I mean, the indigenous community is much more susceptible to these plant toxins, much more susceptible. I mean, I had a lady that was in one of my groups. She was, First Nation up in Canada, and she'd been carnivore since she was a kid. Her parents had grown up carnivores and things like that. She's of that generation. And then she was growing up and she was sort of eating that way anyway. But then her daughter was getting very, very sick and couldn't eat anything except meat. It was anything else would make her very, very, very unwell. She had a very serious medical condition. And eating just meat stopped that. And so she just ate meat, for the last 40 years. That's it, right? And that was very normal, and they were hunting a lot and doing all that sort of stuff. So that was very normal, and that was part of their culture anyway. Very extremely healthy. I mean, she was in her, I guess she was probably 60 or so. She had her daughter when she was around 20, and she looks like she was 35. And the thing is that she actually still had 4 autoimmune conditions. She was still using seasonings. Right? She was using spices and seasonings for the meat, but everything else was just meat. And so she came across my videos talking about, hey, just getting rid of that last 5% can make 95% of the difference, and these plant toxins can cause serious issues. She just said, well, that's crazy. That couldn't possibly. It's just spices, just seasonings. How the hell can that cause it? But she said, okay, I'll give it 30 days. 30 days in, all of her autoimmune conditions started going away. And she was like blown away by this. I spoke to her later on. She was saying that she contacted me and was saying that there was this rash of childhood epilepsy in the First Nation population, the indigenous population up in Canada, and she was saying it started exactly when they weaned off onto solids, and they stopped breastfeeding. They weaned on the solids, and so I was just like, well, if they're not having it before and they are having it afterward, that sort of suggests that something that they're weaning onto is causing that. Right? Because they weren't having it before, right? And she just went, I should have, there's like a law or some sort of ordinance or something like that Canada had, the Canadian government, I guess. I don't know too much about it. It's just coming from her. But that when they weaned off breast milk, they were required to put them on seed oil, sugar-based formulas, right? Which is the only formulas that you have. And so all of a sudden, just bam, they all started getting seizures. And so, so she's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to take this back, and we're just going to try to just, have everybody go, meat only, when they do this sort of thing. So, they're much more susceptible, right? Because they don't have 10,000 years like certain, genetic backgrounds and things like that of exposure to plants from agriculture. Like it's just right. They've had 100 years. That's it. The Australian Aboriginals, they've had 100 years. It was basically in the late 1800s. They were basically forced to sort of westernize. They were taking kids away from families, putting them in English boarding schools and feeding them, British sort of crappy stuff. I mean, as far as plant-based Western food goes, I mean, I'm sorry to everyone in England, but your food sucks.
Yeah.
Like you go. I lived there. I can absolutely say this because I've lived there and it sucked. I'm sorry, but you go to the top flight restaurants and things like that. Some of the best chefs in the world. They're not cooking English food. It's like peas on toast.
Yeah.
It's like, come on. And so you go to a bistro and you get all this sort of stuff. Sure.
No, Vegemite's in Australia.
What the hell? No, they eat it. They eat it in Vegemite. This stuff's disgusting.
Yeah, there's a lot of gross stuff out there. Marmite, come on, and Vegemite in Australia. It's all disgusting. And I mean, people that like Vegemite and Marmite defend this like heroin addicts, going like, "Don't take it away from me." It's just like, and it's like it's disgusting, and but yeah, so. So they put these poor little kids on of all the different Western foods, British Western food. I couldn't even give them like a French cuisine or something like that. It was British slop, and that's the amount of time that they've had to switch over. They instantly, like within years, generations, became the absolute hands down sickest people in Australia. There's not a shadow of a doubt. When I first came here, I was told day one and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. It was repeated over and over again that if you get an Aboriginal patient, whatever it says on their sticker, add 20 years to their age, because they just age so much faster than other people, and they just deteriorate so much faster. So they get diabetes quicker, they get cancer quicker, they get heart disease quicker, they get heart failure quicker. So anything that you would expect to see in a 60-year-old population, you need to be thinking about that for a 35, 40-year-old, because they just, their bodies just break down. Okay, why is that? Right? Because they don't have the protections against these toxins like other populations do. We still get the same diseases. They just get it 20 years, 30 years earlier. Right?
Yeah.
So, and I mean, what else can that be? You know,
You
eating
see
the
some
same
really
food.
sad.
The
I worked with.
exposure.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I worked with Indigenous social services here in Canada for a period of time. And I remember the saddest thing I came across was at one point we had a group of Inuit come down for treatment at one of our, I was living in Ottawa where we had like the sick kids hospital. And they came down for treatment for a number of children. And some of our social workers were caring for this group of babies while the parents were at the hospital with their other children. And they had left bottles of Coca-Cola mixed with breast milk to feed the babies. And that was like what they had been taught when people had come to their community. Not to say that
That's
this
criminal.
is indicative of all Inuit communities, but there was this group of about 20 people, and they had left us breast milk mixed with Coca-Cola. And then a few of them who were more health-oriented had left breast milk mixed with chocolate milk for their babies. And this was like, and we were trying to talk to them about, health and not feeding this. And they were just, what do you mean? This is what we were told to feed our children. And it was just shocking, because the diabetes rate, obviously we know is pretty. But the impact of the Inuit community being that they were probably one of the more natural-based communities for such a long period of time, where, First Nations and everybody down more, not so north in Canada, were maybe more westernized at a different rate. But just so heartbreaking to see these women believing that Coca-Cola and breast milk is best for their babies, and what the impact to that infant is going to be.
Can't even.
And who taught them that? I mean, that's criminal. That's actually criminal.
A lot of years ago, before I understood diet in the capacity I do now. But it was really sad. We were all just very sad. All the women I worked with were all, Indigenous mothers. I was the only non-Indigenous person working with the organization. And even at that, a lot of them were very westernized and still were like, who told you to do this? Like, where did you think that this was correct? But I mean, it was literally just across this certain group of women, all that was their belief system was just like, if they were healthier, they used chocolate milk. And if they were, not as healthy, they were using Coca-Cola and breast milk in bottles.
That's crazy.
They weren't even taking to breastfeeding the baby anymore. The baby was on a bottle. Like, some of these were very new infants. And I think we were able to kind of educate them, hopefully, away from that with the period of time they spent with us. But they were very resistant in the beginning. They were very convinced that this was a healthy feeding system. Yeah, that was what's best for their babies.
From my experience, it's a lot of push. And I mean, I'm in America, so I mean, supposedly better than most as far as being willing to accept certain things. But when I was breastfeeding my now 4-year-old, I breastfed him for 2 years. At 6 months of his age, I was being pressured significantly by my doctors and pediatricians that he didn't need to be breastfeeding for so long. This really wasn't healthy for him. He needed to be put on solid foods. I needed to start introducing, fruits and vegetables. I needed to start getting these purees, fed to him, and that it was more important for me to get him switched over and that it wasn't going to be good for his long-term health for me to breastfeed as long. In fact, it would be potentially detrimental to his jaw structure. And I'm like, you guys don't even know what you're talking about. You don't even know what you're talking about. Where did you read this? Where where have you gotten
Where's
this
the study that
information?
shows that? Yeah.
Exactly.
What are you basing it on? You know?
And my doctors, I live in a very small town, very clicky, connecty, small country bumpkin town. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I'll give it that. But it was just mind-boggling to me how much pressure it was, that it was almost an annoyance to them that I was like, no, I'm going to breastfeed for as long as I can. No, I'm going to do this for as long as, I feel like I'm physically able, especially because I was functioning, I have half a thyroid. I got pregnant after that surgery happened, and I breastfed for 2 years. I've not ever been on thyroid medication. I've stayed, carnivore, animal-based throughout that whole time. And that already alone, like, I had to keep that secret. I couldn't tell them my dietary regimen, the things that I was eating, because I already had, what is it? CSS, DSS, whatever, called on me several times just to check in, make sure I was, not harming myself, not harming the baby, not doing these things, like, because I would refuse the sugar, insulin tests. I would refuse, like, all of these things and they considered that because I wasn't following protocol, I was potentially doing harm or detriment. And it was like, these things aren't required.
Because you wanted to breastfeed, they thought you were endangering the child. Makes sense.
More than 6
Love
months.
that.
Yeah. More than 6 months.
More than
I'm like,
that's ridiculous.
you
It's
guys are
minimum
insane.
6 months.
Exactly.
Minimum.
Yeah.
Right?
Even so I had a lot of complications during my pregnancy because I carry a double negative E antibody. I have a big E, little e antibody that I carry in my blood system, apparently. Learned this recently when I was pregnant, which is not conducive to carrying pregnancies, apparently. And so what that ends up doing is it ends up causing, during the later term in gestation, it ends up causing anemia for the child, not for me, but for the child, because the blood is not being accepted as it cycles. So during that, I ended up in an emergency C-section. He was 6.5 weeks early because they had to do an in utero blood transfusion. Within 24 hours of the in utero blood transfusion to my son, I went into emergency labor. They brought me in. I ended up in an emergency C-section. Now, mind you, my son is 6.5 weeks early. He's preemie. And they were upset with me because I refused to allow them to formula feed him until he was able to be breastfed.
Yeah. So you pumped or something? Or?
Well, I pumped. He did not eat for the first 3 days. And finally, by the 3rd day, he was able to be taken off of the tubing to be able to be fed, because he had to have breathing tubes and stuff for him. And now, mind you, my baby at 6.5 weeks early, we all jokingly called him preemie giganticus because he was born at 6 pounds, 8 ounces at 6.5 weeks early. But his lung system was not necessarily prepared, and the anemia aspect, obviously he needed more assistance than should have been had he been able to. But even the nurses there in the NICU were angry and upset because I would not sign the waivers to allow them to bottle feed him formula instead of coming to me when he was ready to eat. It was insane. And I'm like, why? I'm a very, like, I'm one of those women, very fortunate that, I produce milk very early. I mean, usually by about my 6th month of pregnancy, I'm already producing. So I'm very fortunate. So there was no like worry or lack of concern that there wouldn't be enough. They just didn't want to have to be bothered with having me come in every 2 hours.
Yeah, I don't know. It's well, look, you know, if someone's not willing or able to do that, fine, use formula, right?
Right.
But
Right.
but if you are, why are you badgering someone and making them feel bad about wanting to do the best thing for their kid? I mean, just
It
because it's
was,
more convenient for you as a nurse, that's not the right thing to do.
yeah,
It's not about being convenient for you; it's about doing the right thing for your patient, and
exactly.
that should always take precedence.
Yeah. That's,
We need more Dr. Chaffees in the world. That's what we need.
yes.
In
Yes.
a
People
multitude
think
of capacities, but
But you know,
people,
these principles are taught in medical school. They're taught in nursing school. Like this isn't foreign to any of us. You know, this was told to us. It's like, hey, you should treat everybody like your family member because your family members are going to be in here. Someone's going to be treating them. You want them treating them like your family member, right? So you need
right?
to do that for other people because other people are doing it for you. So even if you are an asshole and a sociopath and you don't actually care about other people outside of your little social group, it's still the right thing to do. You should still recognize that, oh, this is how I should behave. This is how I do my job. This is the job. The job is caring for people and doing the right thing for the patient. That's the job. If you don't want to do that, go do another job. It's not for everybody. You know, it's hard, and doing the right thing is not always the easy thing. You know, it would be a lot easier if I just slept through all the 50 freaking calls that I get every single night and just like turn my phone on silent, just sleep through it and just deal with it in the morning. But you know what? People are going to die if I do that. And
Mm.
so that's obviously the wrong thing to do. You can't do that. You know, so it's what's easy for you is not the point. You know, if you want an easy job, do something else. A lot
Yeah.
easier jobs than any discipline in medicine, be it doctors, nurses, etc. I mean, it's a tough job. Most of them are tough jobs. There's some easier you can get to, but you know, for the most part, you're making big sacrifices, and that's the point. You know,
Mhm.
people need help, and you need to help them, and so you do the right thing for them, not the right thing for you.
Yeah. I think that should be the basis of understanding of anybody who goes into the medical field or goes into the educational
Yeah.
field. Like those 2
Mm.
fields, you're not doing this to be in self-service. And
Mm.
if you go into that field in a self-service perspective, you're in the wrong field. And
Mm.
that's somehow gotten misconstrued. I think that people have gotten blinded by either the ease of getting it, because I know here in the United States, the ease of getting a teacher's degree is rather easy, and there's no pay for it. As far as like starting out teacher education, right? For like elementary school. Getting a doctorate, I think a lot of people, when they're young, they see the money. They're not necessarily being fully encouraged about what exactly are you doing this for? Why do you want to be a doctor? What are you wanting to help? What are you wanting to heal? What are you wanting to either research or educate on to make it better for people, humanity, animals, the planet, whatever it is? We've kind of lost that. And we've been taught in society that the money means more than the person. And that's sad.
Mhm.
And a lot of people think that like I'm anti-doctor, and I'm not, because there are doctors like you, like Dr. Encore, Dr. Baker. I mean, it's Dr. Kiltz. I mean, there's so many of you guys that are willing to be standing on the forefront to show people, look, wake up. What we've been allowing for people is bullshit, and we need to stop this because we're hurting ourselves. I'm not anti-doctor, I'm anti doing it for the wrong reasons. I'm anti
Mm.
people not doing it to help people.
Yeah,
But
definitely. On that note, probably do need to run because I got to go help people in the morning. So I've still got a lot of work to do. So
Yeah. Didn't expect to have you on this long, but appreciate it
Yeah.
tremendously, and thank you
Very
so much.
welcome.
And everyone, we know this was a surprise
You're very
live.
Mm.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
thank you
Yeah.
all. But
Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
of course, absolutely.
Mhm.
Anytime, every time.
Mhm.
All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and end this one out. Thank you for showing up. We will have this streaming to you soon. So look forward to starting things here July 1st. And I'll let you guys all know more in the future. Bye.
Bye.